Welcome to Nuanced Beauty. This podcast is intended to be a spot where my husband Bill and I will capture some complex thoughts and challenge us to hold to our opinions loosely so that we can see the beauty in others and the beauty in ourselves. I want to challenge us to dive deeper into those everyday topics and those sticky topics that we might shy away from, or we might bulldoze over others with our opinions. Because I think there's wisdom in this idea that if we all thought exactly the same, there would be no need for anyone else. So let's have a conversation and let's get nuanced. Hi guys, welcome back to Nuanced Beauty. It's Christina and I've got Bill here.
Hey everybody.
And today we wanted to talk about a lighter topic. Nuanced Beauty, the whole point is to get into some deeper thoughts about a topic, and sometimes they might be heavier topics, and other times they could be kind of fun and entertaining.
On full transparency, 52 weeks is a lot of content to come up with in a year. So, hey, we can think deeply about things that are simple as well as things that are complex, right?
Exactly. So for this week, I wanted to dig into the topic of coffee because as we have moved from the Northwest to the Southeast, we found out that we are coffee snobs.
When did that happen?
It happened. It happened over the past 8 years. We became coffee snobs.
And so we've had to reckon with that and learn that about ourselves. And so that brings up the question of like how do you engage with people who
when they're a snob about a topic?
Yeah,
right?
if they aren't into the thing that you're into or are super into a thing that you're super not into, like are you dismissive of that thing? Are you disparaging in that thing? Like where does your heart go when you're faced with that?
Right. To put it in other words, can you appreciate someone nerding out on a thing that you know little or nothing about? Or are you going to tend to want to dismiss them because you're uncomfortable not knowing anything about the topic? This goes back to the very first episode where I chatted about having curiosity for things you don't know. And as I was thinking about coffee initially, I was drawing a connection between coffee being the lifeline of Seattle in the dreary, overcast winter months. It is what keeps everyone moving forward. It is where you have coffee dates, you play board games, relationships are forged, and you make it through those crappy, cloudy, dark days with a good old warm cup of coffee.
And it's just the thing you do.
Yes, it is. It's integral to the culture. And as I was processing that, and chatting with a girlfriend who now lives in Arkansas, and she isn't originally from the South, she brought up sweet tea.
Yeah, because we're coming down here to the South saying, oh, the South doesn't know how to make coffee. And she's like, well, the North doesn't know how to make sweet tea. And we're like, she's right. Because I was actually really excited about sweet tea when we came to the South because I when I went to sea for the first time, I went with a guy from Texas and we joined a ship in Houston and he pulled me aside. He's like, I got to show you where to find good sweet tea. And I said, cool. What sweet tea? Because I'm from Wisconsin. So I didn't know that was a thing that existed.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's actually a really good point. Because I've heard so many Southerners be very snobby about sweet tea. Now you Yankees don't know how to do it. And I'm just sitting here thinking, well, you don't know what a pour over is. So
yes. Yeah. It's the comparison is there, like the drink of choice, or maybe the thing that defines like what you feel passionate about in a culture.
The cultural touchstone.
Yeah. And with that, I think can you like
So the question was, when did we become coffee snobs? And I think, to quote John Green, it happened the same way you fall asleep. It happened slowly,
yes.
and then all at once. So,
and we didn't know it until we were removed from
Well, I
Where you
think
were
I
at.
think where when it really came into light is when my stepmom came to visit us in Seattle,
Mm,
and we went. It wasn't even to a coffee shop. We went to a donut shop, to Top Pot Donuts on Alki, and I was drinking a lot of espresso at the time, so I got a quad americano in a 12-ounce cup with a little bit of ice, because the espresso comes out just too hot. You want to be able to drink it, you know. I put thought into this. And her eyes were just the size of tea saucers. And she said, "Oh, my son has a coffee order." And then she looks at the barista, and in a loud and slow voice, as though what she's saying was designed to confuse and to strike fear, she said, "I would like a plain black coffee." And the lady behind the counter, bless her heart, said, "Yeah, sure, man, no problem." And made her a cup of coffee, because that's not a crazy thing to do, but in her mind,
because you just ordered this elaborate quad
not even
shot
elaborate. It's,
Americano.
it's just a
It's not.
crap ton of
It's
espresso.
4 shots. Quad means 4,
Well, because they come
and
in
it's hot
pairs,
water.
so there's no point in getting odd
Making a
numbers of
triple, and then
shots.
they gotta throw
They got
half
to
a
throw
shot
it
in there
out. I'm
anyway.
just being sustainable here. It comes in pairs. Because I've had so many baristas, like, I'll order a triple, and they'll say, "Well, it comes in even numbers. Do you want to just have the fourth one?" And so eventually, I just started ordering the fourth one.
Yeah.
So I just ordered butt tons of espresso.
Yeah.
And she saw that as like this well, and frankly, she saw it as a femininity. She saw it as a superfluity. She saw it as this weirdness. Because, like, oh, you should just be drinking regular coffee. You're having good old American coffee.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah, and for Seattle, it's not a crazy thing to try different coffees. You regularly go to a shop and you can get an Americano, you can get a
well,
macchiato, and of
I
course, like
put
Seattle is the headquarters of Starbucks, and
Which isn't
that
even the best
is
coffee in Seattle, but still, it's like, again, the cultural touchstone.
yeah, it's the place to go. And you over time, right? Like a good 8 years of being in Seattle, we had the opportunity to try all these random drinks. And the baristas out there are amazing. Like they make very good coffee, and coffee shops have their own twist on different lattes. And
Well, and
it just becomes second nature.
I've put a lot of thought into this, and we kind of categorize, and in pop culture, and especially in like the blue collar comedy tour sector of culture that I came from, um, we categorize coffee separately. But really, what we're talking about is no different than cocktails,
Hmm.
than having a good, they call it a barista. It's a bartender, and all the parallels are there. If you're
Right.
getting espresso, it's not something fancy. You're just getting this like liquor straight up. And if you're getting something with milk and sugar and whatnot, it's just a cocktail. It's just a mixer. It's just an
Yeah.
old fashioned.
Yeah.
Nobody's looking down on me for drinking an old fashioned. That's a manly drink. But if I get a latte, that's a whole different thing.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I'm painting with super broad strokes just from this one specific and somewhat traumatic experience I had with my stepmom. But
Hmm.
but
But that kind of leads into the idea of like because we've had the opportunity to have so many different types of coffee drinks.
Mhm.
How do you take your coffee? Because you have some strong
I'm
feelings
I'm
about the
being
milk.
I'm being very high horsey about this whole thing, as though I don't have my whole lurid history of being like looking down on how other people drink coffee. Because when I was in high school, we had two teachers. Uh, we had more than two teachers, but I had two teachers relevant to this story,
Or
and they were
memorable.
great friends and the worst of enemies. It was Mr. Strand and Mr. Prawl, and I loved Mr. Strand. He was my favorite teacher. I became a teacher later in life because of the influence he had on me. He got me interested in science and engineering, and that's shaped the whole rest of my life. He's an important person in my story, and he drank coffee black. And he said, if you have to put milk in your coffee, you should not be drinking coffee. I said, damn right, Mr. Strand, because he was like the one teacher I really like resonated with.
Yeah, I looked up
His
to.
best friend and worst enemy, Mr. Prawl, drank his coffee blonde. And that's not a little bit of milk. That's like mostly
Would you
milk.
like some coffee with your milk?
Yeah, and that's how that was just one of the things they kind of jabbed at each other about, and that was kind of fun as you got further into high school and you start seeing your teachers as people who have
Not
relationships with
just
one another. Like that was
good humored.
yeah, it was very formative in my life to see this relationship between these two men. But I went through a long time where I did not put milk in my coffee because if
Hmm.
you needed And then I went to one of the coffee stands, one of the many coffee stands around Seattle. One of the few where people wear clothes, but one of the coffee stands around Seattle, shaped like a boat, which is fun. And I ordered a black coffee. I started drinking just regular coffee for a while when money was kind of tight, and I actually realized I really enjoyed coffee,
Yeah.
and not the cocktails, which is
Yeah,
fine.
$2 or $3 drink
Yeah.
versus a $5 or $6 latte.
But in
Yeah.
any event, I ordered a regular coffee with nothing in it, as I do, and I'm driving and I'm thinking, wow, Portside Espresso is really up their game, man. This coffee is so good. It's like this nuttiness. It's a little bit less acidic than some other coffees I've had. I'm just really enjoying this. And then I get about halfway down and I take the lid off, and there's milk in this coffee. And the crisis in my mind of having just done this blind taste test, and like my life is a lie. My identity was built on drinking black coffee.
Hmm.
And so
And then
it just
you
shows.
realize that adding a little milk actually brings a different flavor out of the coffee.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, and people say this with like whiskeys and water. Like, the
Yes.
true like whiskey drinkers actually put quite a bit of water in the whiskey.
Changes the
It
notes, the
it
flavor
changes the notes.
profile. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. For me, coffee, my grandma was a whopping 4 foot something.
She was 4'11".
She
Why
was,
do I know this?
I don't know why you know this, but my grandma was like 4'11", and she smoked a lot of cigarettes. Always had a cigarette in her hand, and she drank a lot of coffee. So I remember back to like maybe third grade, and I was the youngest. No, I think I have one cousin a little younger, and then my brother and my other cousin. So the four of us are like third, fourth, fifth-ish grade. And we were sitting around the table, and Grandma served us our first cup of coffee. And I remember thinking that it was just cool, because I thought like, oh man, the grown-ups get to drink coffee. And I actually did not really drink coffee for many years until high school. And I would say in high school, that's when Starbucks was pretty popular, and I worked in the mall. So I drank a good number of Starbucks. And going out to sea, you drink a lot of just black coffee or coffee with milk. And then, of course, we got to Seattle, and my horizons opened.
So speaking of open horizons, first of all, I gotta tell you this one last coffee store with Mr. Prawl, where uh, he would have a pot of coffee brewing in his classroom,
Mm-hmm.
and I would arrive early because I was slick, and I would hide my textbooks in the back of Mr. Strand's room. So when I was going from classroom to classroom, I'd go back to my locker. So I was there super early when nobody else was there, and I'd pour myself a cup of coffee from his coffee pot while he was out of the classroom, and I would hide it cleverly, like behind my foot, thinking he didn't know. I did this all year. And then the last week of school, like one of the last classes I had before graduation, I didn't do it that day for whatever reason. And he goes and he pours me a cup of coffee, Mr. Prawl does, and sets it on my desk saying, hey, you forgot this. He knew the whole time.
He knew you were making a cup of coffee every day.
And he let me do it. That's amazing.
That's very cute.
But so on one of the ships I sailed on.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah, because you mentioned drinking coffee at sea. And coffee is a way
yeah.
of life at sea. It's very important. Like
Yeah, I don't think our industry is the only one, but obviously it's what we can speak to. Like
Mhm.
your shift when you're on watch or you're on breaks, like coffee is very significant. It is a
Well, I think there's two things that are relevant to it, and one is the union culture of like we are entitled to this
this
coffee
break.
break.
This is our coffee break. Yes.
Yes, and
Yes.
you do not break the sanctity of that coffee break
Mm-hmm.
for anything. The ship's sinking, we're still taking coffee. The
Uh-huh.
other hand is we work such odd hours.
Yeah.
Daytime, nighttime, middle of the night. We work today and then tomorrow night overnight because of the maneuver. Like
Right.
your
And
your sleep schedule is off, so the coffee is somewhat mandatory.
yeah, and it kind of for me being up on the bridge, my 8 to midnight watch would be first cup of coffee would take me the first hour, second cup would be the second hour, third hour would be tea, and then I'd be done for the night. So there was like a routine that actually kept time for me based on my cup of coffee
Yeah.
and how long it took to
For
drink
me,
it.
the smell of coffee meant my watch was about over because we'd make a fresh pot for the oncoming watch, so that when they came to work at midnight, because I stood 8 to 12 too,
Mm-hmm.
they had that fresh pot.
Yes, yeah, you have to make that
Uh,
pot of coffee
that
for the
again,
next one.
that my oiler on my watch refused to let the 12 to 4 make the coffee.
Oh, because they didn't make it
because
well.
he didn't make it right.
Yeah.
I loved having this guy on my watch, but uh, it's usually Folgers or Ubon Gold
Yeah,
or
I
Maxwell
had a ship
House.
that bought San Fran Bay. They were
San
all
Fran Bay,
about the San
the
Fran
tracker had
Bay.
San Fran Bay. Uh,
Mhm.
so when I showed up on the Golden State and she had Folgers, I was getting far enough in my career that I felt comfortable saying, "No, guys, I'm going to bring us some good coffee." And we don't need that fancy pants coffee. They don't. They said some more colorful language. We're sailors and all men, so like my masculinity was questioned, but I didn't care because I needed good
The
coffee,
coffee.
and
Yeah.
I didn't get good coffee. I got Starbucks, which is better than
Pike's
Folgers, but
roast
again,
or something.
it's not like the best of the best coffee. This was before they started making the blonde roast. This whole thing. Um, but I thought, no worries, guys. I will go buy the coffee. I will come down early and I'll make the coffee, and you
Mhm.
guys are welcome to have some. But I want the good coffee, so I'm going to do this extra work. But I only bought like 4 or 5 pounds of the stuff,
Mhm.
so we ran out midway through the trip.
Yeah.
And everyone who would give me so much crap the
Yes.
entire trip said, "We can't go back. We can't go back.
Where's the coffee?
Where's the good coffee?" Like in a way, I ruined them.
Yeah, because
I
now
ru-
they gotta buy their own
now they
coffee.
have to, and now that I'm in another chair, I'm the guy that approves the recs. I tell them buy the good coffee. Like
Yeah, if you
I
want the
will,
better.
Tom Crowley will pay for it. Um,
I don't know if you're supposed to put your company out there, but whatever.
uh,
Continue on. It's an interesting like thought there about the type of coffee and then the brewing too. I think we could kind of like roll into the idea of a pour over. Back in Seattle, the shop that I enjoyed for a pour over was Olympia Coffee. It was in West Seattle, and there's all these finite tweaks that you can make: the temperature of the water, the speed of the pour, and
coarseness of the
the
ground.
coarseness of the ground. Like a pour over is is a skill, and it is lovely. But coming here, I mean, you've had a couple incidents where
Oh,
you've asked for a drip
well,
coffee.
yeah, because in Seattle where things are mostly espresso based, if you want regular coffee, you order a
Mm-hmm.
drip coffee
Because
because
that's the
that's the
machine, is
style of
the
machine.
drip machine.
And more than once, they've like made me a pour over. I'm like, no, I just want the coffee that's in the urn right there. Like I'm specifically ordering this because I want something in and out fast, and they
Mm-hmm.
make me they make me a pour over.
Yeah.
And poorly. Like I had to pull around to the other side of a Starbucks in like Central Florida, and like I waited for like 20 minutes while they were trying to figure out what they were
Oh
doing in there.
my
And I'd
gosh.
already paid, so like I wasn't I wasn't about to leave.
For any friends back in Seattle, if you happen to work at Starbucks, like we really got to up the game in the
Well, and
Southeast
that was
because
there.
I understand why. Like there are Starbucks down here and it's one of the main coffee shops,
One
but
of the only
like
coffee shops.
yeah, it's one of the only, but they're not that great down
Well,
here.
it's
And it
it's the
might be
water.
the water
It's 100%
quality.
the water.
It's the water quality, but there's some basic language that's lacking. But that goes again, this goes into the coffee snob in us.
We're snobs. We're just
We
normal snobs.
are. We
Which
are.
I don't care for Olympia's coffee because it has kind of a wood tone to it, kind of like
Or
how
a
Caribou.
floral. So it
Nah, the
depended.
floral's okay, but the woodiness, the not wood like cedar or oak. It's more like I'm chewing into a 2x4. Like it's straight like
Mm,
construction lumber. But the best coffee, if any of our listeners are still in the greater Seattle area, there's a place called Better Living Through Coffee in Port Townsend. Go on a weekday. Don't go on the
where
weekends.
it's
It's a
not
huge
tourist
tourist trap.
filled. Yeah.
Go on a weekday. It's right on the water, right by the ferry terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a number of different blends. I don't know the difference between any of them, but they're all great. And
Mm-hmm.
what they do is they have this big like rack, this 8 wide pour over rack that they like make all these pour overs at once in. It's just like the funnels in the rack and the coffee goes underneath it.
Right.
But um, I need to like evangelize for Better Living Through Coffee. It is a fantastic coffee place.
Yeah, that kind of like I
A lot
guess.
of alpaca, a lot of suspenders. It's a very hipster sort of place. Very
Hmm.
interesting people watching place too.
Yeah, that kind of
That's
like
part of the
goes
coffee shop
into
culture.
Seattle favorite coffee shops in Seattle. So we brought up Portside, which is near.
They're
It's
not
off of.
portside anymore.
Oh
It's
well,
still shaped like a boat, but there's a new name.
okay, so there's one that was called Portside, and hopefully it's still a good cup of coffee off of Marginal Way in West Seattle. Um, I really, really loved Uptown Espresso because when they steam their milk, they put the steamer at a particular angle, so the milk has this super frothy like yum.
They call it the velvet foam.
Yes, the velvet foam, and I think it's all about the angle of the steamer. And they also use like a Hershey's chocolate for their
Hmm.
mochas, and so it's delightful. I loved Uptown. There's also this really fun shop that was maybe in Wallingford. It was like a cat cafe, like a kitty cat cafe, where they had cats for adoption that got to roam the coffee shop, and you could go sit and have coffee with a friend, and cats would be hanging out everywhere. That was a really fun shop. What about you? Which shops were you all about in Seattle?
Well, in Uptown was where I had all of my like relational coffees. That's where I'd go if I was like meeting friends for important stuff. I'd go to Uptown. There's a couple of different. When Zeke was a baby, though, I used to go to Tully's.
Oh,
That was
right.
before
Tully's before it
Tully's. Yeah, it
closed.
went bankrupt
Oh,
overnight. There was a
that was
Tully's
so sad.
by the beach, and I would go when you were working nights. I'd go get Tully's in the morning so you could sleep, during the day, and we'd
You
walk the
guys would,
beach.
yeah, walk,
I was a big
stroll
fan
around
of
the
Tully's
beach.
coffee.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
Hmm.
Oh, there's another a good coffee reference that we actually were chatting with a group here, and the affogato.
Hmm.
So on
Oh, the
Alki
avocado.
Beach, there was this Italian gelato place, and you get a scoop of gelato, and they do a doppio, a double shot of espresso, on your scoop of gelato, and it is so good. It's like an Italian thing, right? That's why it's
It's
called an affogato, or I forgot.
well, yeah. Like I always forget. Like, oh, if I ever forget what this drink is, I'm just like, oh, I forgot. Oh, yeah,
That's what it
that's what
was.
it was. But it's a root beer float with espresso. It's amazing,
Yeah, that was a really good
and no root
coffee
beer,
joint too.
just an espresso float.
And then fast forward to here. Good
And
coffee. This is where we
bold
totally
bean.
deflate.
I found one.
Ah,
It's just
yeah, bold
it's
bean.
just out of the way.
And they don't have a changing table
And
in their
so
bathroom,
I
which is
put a
annoying.
ton of
Maybe.
thought into this because I'm like, I can't find good coffee shops. And why am I struggling so much? It's not the coffee, frankly. Like the coffee's not as good
It's
here,
the
but
environment.
it's the
It's the
environment.
ambiance.
It's the ambiance.
It's the
And
feel.
so there's a place called Poor Mike's near our house. And I'm sitting
Mm-hmm.
there like feeling so at home.
Yes.
And why do I like this place so much? It's the wood grain.
It has the wood
It's the
grain.
wood
The
grain. That's
tables
that's
are
I've done the meta analysis.
okay. Well,
The
for you,
single
that's
identifying factor of a good coffee shop is wood grain furniture.
wood grain furniture.
Dark
Yeah,
browns and greens.
yeah, and the greens. So I was about to say the greenery, like whether it's fake plants or it's real plants, having some plants around, having the wood grain, and they do a decent cup of coffee. I liked their lattes, their pour over. They could use a little work on the pour over, but that's okay.
It's a little light, yeah.
Yeah, but it had the place where you could go and you could sit with someone and you could connect. And
With music that's quiet enough that you can connect.
yeah, I think that's the one shop we found. They Kookaburra is too open. Like it feels very
White.
clean. Yeah, there's a very like white marble floors. They have some bamboo tan tables that are nice, but it feels kind of
Cold.
open. Yeah, it's very open. There's not that much seating. It doesn't feel homey. And but their coffee is pretty good, and we've tried Bold Bean, both the downtown and the Jacksonville, and they opened this Eliano's, which is like very close to our house. It's a drive-through, which is nice
Which is a win.
because yeah, because we're used to like having a drive-through coffee stand on every other street. Maybe not every other street, but legit, people will buy a little trailer and they would set up their drive-through coffee, and it would be pretty good. Like
Yeah.
I never had any complaints.
Exactly.
But they yeah, they're few and far between here.
So the question is, you've heard us nerd out on coffee and just really lay bare for you the snobbishness that we're really trying to be vulnerable here for the last 23 minutes and 9 seconds. So the question
Can you
for
still
you,
like us?
well, okay,
That's the question I would ask. No,
can you
good
still
question.
like us?
Yeah.
The question for you to engage with our Instagram at nuanced_beauty, at nuanced_beauty is: should we start a coffee place?
Should we start a coffee
I think we should
stand?
start a coffee place.
Yeah, we should. We should do a drive-through stand because it's easier. No, but we like the ambiance.
We like the
gotta do
ambiance.
the
No, that's not.
all in or nothing.
Yeah, I mean the draft is cool, but it's not where our heart's passion is.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta have the connection. You have to have the tables, maybe the board games. Maybe the board games. You don't have to have board games, but
Frankly, the board games are part of the ambiance. No one ever plays them, but they're on the shelf,
they're on the
and
shelf.
it feels
And
good that they're
it's
there.
available. It's available
Like
to you.
Salmon Creek.
Yeah.
So, Does Instagram do polls? We didn't do a poll. Do you guys think we should start a coffee shop?
We could do a poll, but it would only be a story. I don't think you could do a poll.
Okay.
But yeah, we love coffee. As you can see, we feel passionately about it. And the only thing we could relate it to down here is how people like their tea, or maybe their grits too. That's another one. Grits are a thing.
I only know that from that scene from My Cousin Vinny. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's on YouTube.
Oh yeah, the legal case. It's good. Go watch that one too while you're at it. But yeah, I think we covered everything. How about you? You got any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if we've been sufficiently nuanced, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, guys, thanks for listening in today, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, everybody. All right, everybody. This week's book recommendation is going to come from me, because this is a book that I've read and felt very passionate about. We didn't have any coffee-related books. We looked at our bookshelf, but we did mention in this episode a little bit about what it's like to be at sea. And if you're looking for some background of what it was we did and what it feels like to be out there, I recommend Into the Raging Sea by Rachel Slade. Into the Raging Sea is the story of the El Faro, which was a trailer ship that sunk during Hurricane Joaquin in 2015. I should know this, 2015. And it does an exceptional job telling you what it feels like to be on a ship. The isolation of it, the cyclical nature of it, the monotony of it, even down to the smell of what an old wheelhouse smells like, the smell of old paneling and dry paper of the charts. It is well, it's emotionally charged for me because I'm a mariner, and I've been on this run, and I've sailed on old steamships, and I didn't personally know any of the people, but I know people who did, and so I highly recommend this book. I highly recommend reading it with the reverence that it deserves for the tale of 24 people who lost their lives on this vessel. But having brought up just life at sea, there's no better tale of it. I don't necessarily agree with all of this person's conclusions, but I did talk to some folks who worked for this company, and it has to fit was an accurate telling of the tale. And the consensus was that it was that this journalist who researched and told this story did a very accurate job, which I was 33 there. It says right there on the front cover. Having not followed the story closely, I didn't know how accurate the telling of the events was, but I can tell you that it does an exceptional job telling you what it feels like to be at sea, and you can read it and say, dang, I can see why I might need some coffee. So, Into the Raging Sea, Rachel Slade, highly recommend it. Heard the audiobook's great too. That's all for this week's book recommendation.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in today. We have made it to February, 3 months running. Thank you for tuning in. And as mentioned, you can follow us on Instagram at nuanced_beauty, and shoot me an email at nuancedbeauty@yahoo.com, and rate and share the show. Take care.